in this competitive world, if you do not have a goal of being really best in the world, then I don't think you'll ever compete. People who leave organizations, their assessment of themselves is much better than their manager's assessment.
There needs to be a limit to perfection. You need to set those limits.
If you earn, we could say, enough respect, wealth, which is enough to your capability, and you are happy with it, then you will be happy. Career planning is an oxymoron.
Ajay Bhandari joins us on this episode. A business leader with 30 plus years of rich experience, Ajay has done it all. He's managed P&Ls of $60 million enterprises, led global teams with over 2,000 professionals, closed M&A deals worth $170 million, and driven strategy alongside top consulting giants like McKinsey, PCG, and Bain. And he's currently the SVP Professional Services at iCertis. Coming up on this episode, why being the best truly matters, what sets future CEOs apart, how to be a Sutradhar in your projects, are jobs becoming too easy and boring, and how the power of 9x9 around you can actually completely change the trajectory of your life. I'm Anirudh. I run Superwork, a small company that specializes in creating podcasts. On this YouTube channel, you can expect valuable ideas, insights on work, life, and success. And if you like what you see, make sure you hit the subscribe button. So Ajay, something that resonated with me and I was also a little curious about is when you said that mediocrity has no place. And that's true. I mean, mediocrity does exist. But if someone wants to grow up in life, being the best matters, right? But tell me where the perspective came from. I'm sure there's a story there.
So typically, I think most individuals have their own value system, right? And companies to have their value system. You've heard companies have their own values, etc. Right?
That's a big thing today.
Yeah, and I've always wanted to be the best, and I've always had this feeling that however small your scope of activity be, that you should be the best, and whether you achieve it or not, at least you should give it everything, right? And I would like to instill that kind of, you could say, philosophy in everybody, and so you have to push. I mean, right now what happens is what I've seen is that people are okay with achieving not so you could say not very good results. Mediocre results are okay, right? And you'll see this always in a performance review, where a person comes to you and tells I think I did excellent in my job, right? So I'm outstanding, or I should be exceeds expectations. And we say, no, you met expectations. And then we always have this debate. And then the individual will ask me, but what do you think will qualify for exceeds expectations? And I will say, in your role, you could have done A, B, C, right? You could have pushed the envelope on A, B, or C. Why didn't you do it? And some people, of course, dig their heels in and say that, no, sorry, I disagree with you. Some people, I will say, why don't you go and reflect and let's have a chat again? Many people come back and say, I agree with you that probably I could have pushed the envelope a little more, done even better. So this whole, I think, in this competitive world, if you do not have a goal of being really, really good and best in the world, then I don't think you'll ever compete, right? And this philosophy cannot be of the CEO or one or two people alone. That philosophy should go down to the lowest level person in the company.
Right.
And I think, at least on my part, I would like to tell everybody that you be the best.
Yeah.
And I push my people to be the best. I hope, people around me also kind of push. But I would definitely like to see in whatever we do, my company, my people, my team, etc., that in a competitive ranking that we are the best. It's something that's pushed me, and I've expressed this to the leaders that I've worked in the past too, and they find it very contagious thing to say as well, right? So it's a very motivating thing to tell everybody that you have to be the best in the world. But I think it's as a goal, if you have it, it motivates you, it pushes you, it forces you to be innovative too. Right? Remember, you say necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
If it, if you want to improve incrementally, then you can work harder and probably achieve it. But if you want to make changes of a large scale,
Correct.
then you have to think differently. You have to think, you could say, radically differently. And so, I do like to push the envelope, push people to think, you could say, overachieve, themes like that, which helps them, gain new heights, as well as the organization and therefore the company. We fortunately right now I'm in a company which is kind of the best in the world in what it does. But even if you weren't, right, I would encourage you to be the best in the world in whatever you do.
But does that push people off the edge as well? Some of them.
See, there are two kinds of people, right? So there are people who have the intellectual capacity to scale.
Yeah, to do better.
To do very well, and these people will scale. I mean, with the right level of motivation, they will scale. Right? And they most of these people, I think, they have the ambition as well. Right? There are some who will not have the intellectual capacity. When you don't have the intellectual capacity, you will work hard, but you may not achieve the same, you could say, kind of results. But I do think, if you have, the right level of thinking, you have the ambition, and you're willing to work hard for it, yes, you can achieve it.
But वही होता है ना कि ultimately, say for example, let's take an example of a school. There are always average students like me who would have never come into the ranks, right? But then I would have always been I've always been a mediocre student in school. Thankfully, I've done better outside school. But then what happens to mediocre folks, right? I mean, ultimately, then it's life feels like a burden then, because if the constant expectation is to do the best.
Yeah, I think at some point, you have to make peace with it, probably, right? So
Yeah.
So there are people who are gifted and do very well.
Yeah, of course.
And,
it's easier for them actually.
Yeah. And then there are very average people who don't do well. I think if they make peace with it, then they will be happy.
Yeah.
Right. So but let's say, I mean, I've always felt that people who leave organizations, right, it is because their assessment of themselves is much better than their manager's assessment of them.
Well said.
Right. So
Absolutely.
the manager thinks you're not great.
Yeah.
But he or she thinks, they are great. So they will say, okay, I can't grow here, so I'll grow somewhere else.
Correct.
In many cases, the manager is true. But I have seen cases where I have been proven wrong, where I felt that the person is not, cutting it, but that person left and was immensely successful elsewhere. I was very happy, to be honest, that I was proven wrong and that person was successful. But I think if you earn, you could say, enough respect, wealth, which is enough to your capability, or is commensurate with your capability, and you are happy with it, right? Then you will be happy. I mean, if you crave for something that somebody who's intellectually gifted has achieved, then you will never be happy. I think you have to make peace with your own capability.
But I think good point, and I also feel if someone doesn't enjoy a job, they're probably in the wrong job. If they're mediocre at something, see, I mean, everyone's talented, right? It's just a fitment issue that you're probably doing something that you don't enjoy, and that's why you're mediocre. Because the day you find your passion, the day you find your calling, you will have sleepless nights, but you will happily spend those sleepless nights doing, improving yourself, doing better. That's also a thing. I mean,
no, that's true.
Correct.
That's true. I think I completely agree. I mean, I used to know somebody who was in sales, and he was a brilliant salesperson. But that person wanted to lead a large team. And when that person started leading the team, was not very successful.
Yeah.
And that person, eventually realized that, he is far better in an individual sales role than in a team role, and came back to sales and, continued to succeed. So
nice.
So
Correct.
I mean, I think if you get into a wrong role, and if you are able to correct it and come back, good for you.
Yeah.
But the reverse is also true, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you get into a role which is completely different, but you excel in it.
Correct.
And then you find your new calling because you suddenly realize that your skill had a new purpose. So, yeah.
In fact, interestingly, I've seen, especially in the creative field, media and all, I see a lot of people who don't have the people skills. Right? Managing people is like a completely different ballgame versus having the technical skill as a talent. Being a being a DOP, being a sound engineer, being like an on-air personality versus managing a set of people in your field is completely different. And thankfully, I've seen so many people who have, tested the waters and come back saying, no, this is not my ballgame. I don't want to become a manager. I'm happy being the technical person and I'll just do this. And in fact, there are people I know who are just doing the same stuff, but they're very happy.
Yeah.
Because they're very, very good at their jobs. So
Yeah.
I know a few sound engineers who are superb, but not the managers that a corporate enterprise would want them to be. So that's for sure.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think the role of the manager is to get the most out of his people, right?
Absolutely.
His or her people. And I would say a typical manager knows which person in his or her team he or she can rely on, right? And leave, operate independently, and where they need to intervene.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So I think in some places motivation is important, right? In some cases, you have to be a lot more hands-on, micromanage maybe. I think they tend to have a good idea of the relative skills of everybody in the team, and which is why they can get the most out of them.
Yeah.
So I mean, we should actually, it's not a, people think it's an easy skill, right? But it is not, because
It's crazy.
you have to get most out of everybody.
Yeah.
There are different skill sets, different personalities, and you have to still get most out of everybody.
And everyone has separate set of expectations on their end of how they see the job.
Yeah.
And fitting them into the box is...
It's interesting. Yeah, but so it's an interesting role. I mean, when somebody had once asked me, what do you want? What would you call your skill set? I would say I'm a manager, right? I would like, today I'm managing a IT unit. Tomorrow I would like to manage a cement plant. In the sense that management, is a discipline, is a profession in itself, is a skill set in itself.
Yeah.
And so therefore, you should have the skill set. I know people may argue that you may not have the technical knowledge. I'm saying that, is it really necessary in every field to have the technical knowledge?
Absolutely.
So there's a CEO I used to track who was managing, a retail outfit. Then next day he became after some time became the CEO of a investment bank. And after some time was some wind energy.
Whoa.
Completely unrelated businesses,
Yeah.
but successful CEO. So
Correct.
I think, that's the way I should think always.
In fact, I've interviewed Raman Nanda, who has also handled multiple roles. So he was a CFO, then a CHRO, then a CMO. And today it's impossible to think like that, right? No, HR head or even a CEO would say, no, I don't want like a CFO handling a marketing role and a CMO handling a HR role. It's little difficult because...
In fact, a close friend of mine who's the CHRO today, in between became the head of sales of another unit.
Oh, wow.
And he keeps telling me that his stint in sales, helped him understand so much more about HR too. So, sometimes there's a good cross-pollination of, you could say,
Correct.
Concepts and ideas from different functions too.
Yeah, that's there. But how do you look at, so interesting, and we'll just talk about perfection and then we'll move on. Now, if you say that mediocrity doesn't have much space, how do you look at perfection? Because see, that's like the endless loophole, right? Like it's a rabbit hole that just keeps going down, perfection, right? I mean, you can keep spending hours and hours on it and there's no end to it. But then being good, being the best also comes with a bit of perfection and the need for perfection. So how do you look at perfection then? Because there needs to be a limit. Sorry, I'll just finish my point. So I heard something very interesting, and in fact, that changed my perspective as well about perfection. I am a little, finicky about stuff, and I want stuff to be done in a particular way. But because I heard that, I was like, yes, this is what I wanted to know. I think I saw it on a reel or something like that. Good business leader saying that there needs to be a limit to perfection. You need to set those limits, right? How perfect do you want it? I mean, it can go on to infinity, but you need to set a limit. This is my limit, either like a timeline or the amount of improvements you can make. But they need to stop there because otherwise you will not move forward. But how do you look at perfection then?
So your question is, at what point do you know that perfection is giving you diminishing returns?
Yeah. That's well put. Yeah.
So, see, at least in a corporate world or in a competitive world, fortunately, right, uh, competition in a way is the benchmark for perfection,
Mm.
right? I mean, you have to beat competition. There is no two ways about it,
Right.
right? So now, let's say you beat everybody and you have reached the top. Then you do know that there are two competitors who are behind you who are going to try and beat you because you are suddenly number one, but number two and three are trying to become number one too, right?
Yeah.
So I think so. Therefore, you take the key elements that define you or make you successful and continue to improve those, right? So I think to a large extent, the game for perfection or the pursuit of perfection will not stop, especially if you are in a competitive world. The only downside to it sometimes is if you should not be too tunnel visioned that you're aiming for perfection in something when the world has moved elsewhere.
Yeah. Correct.
Which is happening today with Gen AI, right? So with Gen AI, what is happening is that there are a set of businesses who are aiming for perfection in their business, but Gen AI is completely transforming or disrupting that business completely, right?
Correct.
So sometimes I think too much perfection or pursuit of it may actually result in tunnel vision.
Yeah.
But otherwise, eh, eh, in a competitive situation or in a competitive business, competition defines where you need to be better or the best. Once you are the best, then in most cases there is a customer, right? And and you have stakeholders like you have customers, shareholders, etc. So you could say there are these mileposts, right, which you have to achieve for you to be successful with your customer or successful with your shareholder, and so those kind of keep you going. But I think at one point, if you think that it's reaching diminishing returns, then hopefully wisdom will prevail, and everybody will think we should do something else.
Correct. 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 Let's also talk about people, like especially when we were catching up earlier, you mentioned the role of Sutradhar, of how a manager in a team, in a project, at any level, right? I mean, it could be literally a person managing two people under him or her. That Sutradhar needs to play that role. And as we earlier also spoke about, people management skills kuch alag hi hota hai. Managing people, managing expectations. How do you see, like maybe, because the people who are watching this podcast as well are in that zone of, they're like almost 25 to 35. They're just getting into their first job, second job, just started managing like a small team. Uh, Learning people skills, managing people, understanding how work happens with, ultimately it's all, the biggest part of the equation is people for any business, right? What would you suggest to a young professional of or about the role of a Sutradhar? How do you manage people? How do you manage projects as the leader?
I'll answer this question largely in an IT context.
Sure.
Okay, I've spent a large part of my life in information technology. In all cases, in an information technology project is a finite project. It's a finite timeline, finite budget, where the customer wants to achieve something, and the role of the doer, right, or the project manager in this case, is to clearly understand what the customer is trying to achieve out of this project. And it's not, so there's a superficial, you could say, awareness of what is expected out of the project, but they have to go and look at the why behind the why. Why is the customer actually doing it, right? What are they trying to achieve at their end? Is it really helping with them with some business objective, right? So is it helping improve revenue? Is it helping improve profit? Is it helping keep their customers happier? What exactly is the reason they are doing this? And once you've done that, then when you look at the project and the scope of the project, you can then mold the requirements of that or the scope of that project to that Uber goal or that Uber objective, to that North Star. And this whole concept of the why behind the why, right, is not that easy for people to grasp. And so in this, so what's happened is the way IT projects are delivered, right? There's a lot of, you could say, fragmentation in the roles, lot of compartmentalization. So there is one person who's typically what you call the Sutradhar. It's the role of that person to know exactly what the customer wants to achieve and should stay with that goal right till the end of the project.
Yeah, always keep that in the
Always
back
keep
of
that.
mind.
That's the North Star, right? Right till, so typically in an IT project you have what we call requirement, solution, testing, and then there's handover, transition to support, etc. Right till it's transition to support or transition to back to the customer, that objective should not be lost. So there are very few people who understand that particular Uber goal, right? And if the rest of the people do not understand that, then sometimes you have a case where one part of the project wants to achieve something and the rest of the team is doing something else altogether. So I would suggest that if you are a project manager, please understand the North Star goal of what the customer is trying to achieve.
Correct.
Because based on the North Star goal, you may find sometimes that the solution that you are proposing may actually not be meeting that goal.
Yeah.
Or the reporting or the metrics that you are getting out of this project may not be helping the customer meet that goal. So have a very deep understanding of why the customer is trying to do what they're doing or trying to achieve out of this project. Second is, make sure everybody in your team understands it too. Because people play different roles. There's what we call as a configurator, there's a coder, there's a tester, right? Now, it's important that all of them know what is this objective. Because the tester should also test having this objective in mind, that
Absolutely.
this is what the customer wants, so therefore I should test it in a particular way. Or let's say the person who has asked me to define these testing scripts, right, has not fully thought through.
Correct.
And I'm not testing something which should have or would have been relevant to the customer,
Yeah.
right? So the understanding is very important.
Yeah.
And I would tell the project manager should do both, has to play the role of the Sutradhar as well as educate everybody else. And lastly, I would ask all individual members that if your project manager has not done it, please ask your project manager to advise you, right? Or guide you about what is this Uber goal.
Yeah.
Now, what happens is that these days, with teams, many times what happens is when projects are delivered, people come from different teams.
Correct.
They assemble for a project,
Yeah.
and they look at their role only to the extent of the work that they have to do.
Correct.
They do it and go, right?
Yeah, they have their own silo that they live in.
And that doesn't help the project.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
It's tough.
sometimes it becomes that and invariably all the issues, all the faults, all the defects come up when the customer is live, right? So therefore having a person, I always say that is the role of the project manager, who understands the purpose of the project completely. Second, making everybody know about that purpose.
Yeah.
And second, every individual also, if the project manager has not done it, ask for that purpose and apply the lens of that purpose when you're doing your work. I think all of this will ensure that the end output, is an output that the customer likes and customer's happy for years to come. Otherwise, it's you could say it's an experience that's fraught with friction. It's a customer says that you have not done a good job, and and then we do what you call a make it right to fix it, and
Yeah.
it's quite it's not a good place to be.
But it's a challenge, right? I mean, I've seen it, in fact, in smaller teams. You've handled like people at global level. Communicating that and putting it on paper doesn't help. See, I mean, people also, the person who's putting it on paper might, do a good job. But ultimately, the person who's receiving the message might just take it very lightly. And it's tough. And the bigger the team, the bigger the project, it gets worse. And as you mentioned, people coming in from different verticals, it's absolutely tricky. But have you seen anything that works, like any particular way of communicating this that really works well?
Well, I've always liked the old-fashioned way.
Uh-huh.
So I remember I uh, I had in 2004 I had gone for a project and I was talking to the CIO and he asked me, "What do you need?" Right? We were going to land in incidentally in Dubai. I said, "I need a massive whiteboard and a lot of whiteboard markers because we are going to spend a lot of time there near the whiteboard." So I always prefer the whiteboard.
Ah.
I prefer to go there and I prefer to explain to everything on the whiteboard. And because I think when you do that, there is an engagement.
Yeah.
Right? You want people to ask you questions. You want people to engage.
Yeah.
And like going back to the point I made about the manager earlier, a person who's not engaged, they're in front of you, they're not engaged. You would try to slowly move them out of the project because you want people who are engaged all the time. Right? I prefer that way. Right? Of course, with COVID and with teams being more distributed, it becomes more difficult.
Yeah.
And which is why you may have to eventually do it over a Teams call maybe these days or a Zoom call. But I would try and explain the whole project to them. And if I have the occasion to call them all to a room, I would do that and do it on the whiteboard.
Interesting. Now, a journey starts from being a Sutradhar towards the C-suite, so to say. A lot of people actually are very much keen on getting into the C-suite. At least in the initial days they are. I don't know. As they move up the ladder, sometimes, some people realize that this is not my cup of tea and they accept their reality and, accept the big roles that they get, which is nothing wrong about it. But tell me, you had a very interesting opinion about the kind of people who get into the C-suite. And it's not just about the title. It's the responsibility that matters more, right? A person being given the responsibility of managing a particular vertical, a particular business is, in fact, a compliment in a way, right? But you had a very interesting point of view on what kind of people get into the C-suite. So what is your observation? Who are the people who get into that C-suite and what makes them stand apart from the other? Because on the pyramid, there's a very limited space up on the pyramid. So ultimately, you need to qualify for that.
I was actually fortunate enough to work with a lot of CEOs and some very strong leaders. Right? I think there are a few traits which I found common in most of them. Apart from being hardworking, they're all insanely hardworking. But outside of that, I found all of them supremely intelligent. I don't think, at least this is my personal view, hard work can make you a CEO. Because the role of the CEO is to scale the organization, provide strategic direction, handle during tough times, and handle a variety of, you could say, stakeholders. So you are handling board members, investors, analysts, so you handle a wide variety of people. And your ability to manage the conversation, with different set of people, so it requires a certain level of intellect. I would say intellectual. I also found all of them extremely good with numbers. Very sharp with numbers. Another thing, which at least is my personal bias, I don't think people who are poor on numbers can actually rise to the top. Most of them were superb at networking.
Yeah, that's a big key, right? I mean, that's very important.
Yeah, so they built relationships internally, externally.
Correct.
So they built really strong relationship with people.
Yeah.
Extremely strong communicators. Right? So, and communication has various uses, right? Various versions of it. You communicate to lift a person, right, who's down in the dumps. You communicate a person to motivate a person to excel or to be the best in the world. You communicate with external investors. I mean, sometimes investors, you have a bad quarter. It's your job to to comfort your investors that don't worry. This is just the quarter is just a blip, and it'll we'll go back to the good old days. So extremely strong in communication skills. I also found one thing: they're all very healthy. It's I think very this about you because you cannot work hard, manage the kind of stress that you manage, and rise to the top and have the longevity in your professional life without being either blessed with good health or having the discipline to keep it good, right?
Yeah.
So
Physical and mental fitness has to be at peak, right?
both, yeah. So I think I found, almost all the people that I knew, I found all having this particular quality. And they had stamina. I mean,
Yeah.
really a lot of stamina.
Yeah.
So I think it's this, you could say,
They build that capacity.
yeah, they have infinite capacity and almost a never give up kind of attitude. So it's
Yeah. It's a grit.
yeah, it's that grit. So it's I have seen it in most of the CEOs I've worked with. So
Amazing.
It's there's something else.
Yeah. But tell me, like, are there any common, not issues, that's the wrong word, but what are people from the top observing right now? What are the issues generally that we see across organizations? Because I'll name a few and just to get started. And this is my perspective. I might be completely wrong, but thankfully I'm lucky enough to, network with people like you, speak to a lot of C-suite leaders. And I see a few common themes. One is the whole generational divide, melting pot of all the Gen Y and Z and Gen Alpha will come into the picture now. Baby boomers are like still on the top positions. That conflict, I'm sure, has always happened, like with every generation. So that intergenerational conflict is one. People expecting less work but more money is one. Another thing that I feel, I might be again wrong, is somehow jobs are becoming a little too boring. As in, people are being put into their silos and they're only supposed to do only one thing, like as if they're on a factory floor of just pushing papers or just doing like one specific things, which might make a job boring. And again, this is my perspective because I come from media where every day is absolutely new. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And I literally don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, like, apart from a few things lined up in terms of work. But are jobs becoming boring? How do leaders see this intergenerational conflict and anything else that you see?
The modern day, you could say, trainee or the younger lot that's coming into the workforce, right? Quite a lot of them, have some family wealth, ancestral wealth, or something like that behind them, right? See, I mean, if you, end of the day, if what motivates an individual, right? So sometimes it's just making more money, right?
Yeah.
And nobody gives you more money for the heck of it, right?
Yeah.
So you have to add value in your job,
Yeah.
right?
You literally need to earn it.
Yeah. So therefore now, so you will work hard, yeah, or find ways to add value because you want more money, and you want more money because you don't have it, right? So now, if you looked at, if wealth creation started, at least for the middle class in the early 90s, and now with stock market boom and all that, all that happening, and the IT boom and etc. So I think the modern day child that's coming into the workforce, right, has fairly well off, you could say, parents.
Yeah,
right?
they're well placed. Yeah.
Yeah. So now, does that have a role to play? I'm not very sure, but they are, you could say, more aware of, you could say, work and life balance,
Yeah.
and sometimes insist on it. Now, once again, I'm not very sure whether that's right or wrong, because because if at least in my case now, as we were speaking earlier, I said that I've run into some health issues, and maybe I didn't have the boundary of work and life earlier, and which is why I'm going through all this myself today. Maybe a healthy boundary initially is good, so that you maintain a healthy life. On the work front, I didn't see any change. The people who they come and do the job, they do it well.
Nice.
Now the thing is that for you to succeed, it is not enough to do just what you are being told, or do the scope of your work, which is immediate work, right? So, and it all depends once again on how ambitious you are and what you want to do. Now, if you are happy just doing what you are doing, then yes, we'll continue to, keep you in the company, give you a little bit of compensation increase, but you may not rise to the extent you want to rise because you're
Of
not
course.
showing anything that's new to me, right? So I have a lot of young people, extremely young. In fact, this person who is now in the US, and he meets me once a month. He travels quite a lot because I stay in one side of Pune, he stays in another side of Pune. He meets me once a month just to talk. No agenda, just to talk.
I want to meet you.
I want to meet. He wants to meet me, and he'll ask me questions about what he thinks and about the company. But and ask me for perspectives, and I give him perspectives, etc. And I see a lot of future in that fellow. I think he'll go to reach the top because
दिखता है ना वो.
yeah, you can see it. He's only 25, So you can see him making that effort. And so there are these kind of people too, right? So I think eventually ambition, you could say, wins. The people who are ambitious will put in the extra amount of work, and it has got nothing to do with Gen X, Y, baby boomer, nothing.
Correct.
They will put in the hard work. They will, if you're not ambitious and if you're going to complain of, work-life balance every time I give you more work, then I'll stop giving you more work. But then don't complain to me as well that you're not getting more or you're not getting a kick or etc.
Yeah.
But because, every avenue or opportunity I've thrown at you, you have basically said no, right? So of course they are smarter.
Yeah, a lot.
I mean, my own example is my daughter. I mean, her level of, you could say, intellect is way ahead of what my level of intellect was at her
Correct.
age.
Even
right?
I observed that. Yeah.
And I was seeing her operate we were on a holiday and she had to manage something at her school. And throughout we had gone to Ahmedabad and we were in this car journey. And throughout the journey, she was managing something, sitting in a car from Ahmedabad on the way to this. We had gone to see a temple there. And when I was looking at it, I was thinking this person is going to be something. Right? She's managing it, 200 miles away from Ahmedabad in a broken down car practically where the AC was not working. It was, and she was still managing.
Wow.
So I think they have the opportunities this time. I didn't have any such opportunity, but she has. So they are definitely far more gifted.
Yeah.
So I think, and access to technology, internet, etc. They are well read. So I think if that and ambition, they'll definitely rise much faster than any of us did. At least people from my time. But to me, doesn't make that much of a difference. If you're ambitious, you'll work hard. You'll grow.
Opportunities, talent, and resources when they come together, and nothing like it, right? I mean, amazing opportunity.
There's nothing that this. And I have had this example that I was giving you of this person who meets. There's another person, right? Incredibly well off, very well off person, but the same hunger.
Wow.
Yeah, so
that's a rare breed. Huh?
Yeah. So that I'm when I look at her, I think, okay, she's going to. So there are. So I'm not one. I don't like to generalize that much. What was the second part of the question?
The other thing I wanted to ask was are jobs becoming boring?
See I mean, this is a debate I have with some of my subordinates. They tell me, I want more, I want this and that, and I look at their role and I say that let's say we have something called NPS. Do you know what's NPS?
No.
Net Promoter Score. Basically, it's a metric you track for customer satisfaction.
Okay.
So I say your NPS is X, right? You can make it 2X or 3X, right? Industry best in class is 75. You are at 10.
Oh, wow.
Right? So you can take it to 65, right? You can take it up by 65. You can take it to 75. You are nowhere close to, you could say giving up and saying that my job has become boring because you have done practically nothing to make it interesting. What I said is, why don't you come up with ideas on how to take the NPS from 10 to 75?
Correct.
Right. So I think the goes back to the point about being the best in the world. If you have this desire, if you say that I have this role, in this role I'll be the best in the world, and there are these markers for being best in the world. Okay, which it could be margin, customer satisfaction, etc. Hit it out of the park.
Yeah.
Overachieve margins, overachieve customer satisfaction. I'm going to say yes. You're stuck in a small role. I'll give you a bigger role.
I think that's the kind of perfection you should aim for.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, perfecting something every time.
In fact, what I say is that, if let's say you take a small role and you transform something, right? Then you have developed a skill set
Right.
of taking a problem and transforming the heck out of it.
Yeah.
Right? Now, once you have developed that skill set, because management or growth is about adding skill sets to yourself. Skill sets you didn't have, but skill sets will become muscle memory. So now you have it in you. So now you can, if you have solved a problem at a smaller scale, you can solve a problem at a slightly larger scale.
Yeah.
Once you solve problems at larger scales, you are automatically, ready to be at a higher level. So,
True.
but if you in your current role, if you could say success parameters are pretty, you could say, middling or, average. Why would I think that I'm ready?
Ticking the box.
Yeah. Why would I think you're ready for a larger role? Right?
Yeah.
So I think it's important that individuals also find ways to make their job more interesting.
That's a very good point.
They have to, they have to look at what is my benchmark for excellence in my role, and how will I overachieve it? Right?
Yeah.
And if they do that, who knows? I'm telling you, people notice. This will get noticed. The manager will notice. The manager's manager will notice. They will say that let's move him or her to a much larger role because that person thinks differently.
Yeah. I think, and again, at my limited level, I've observed this, is, a manager or a Sutradhar for that matter, the first thing they observe is the efforts. Second comes the talent. Technical skills can be learnt. The effort comes from here. It comes from here, right?
Yeah.
So that is something that gets noticed first. Technical skills तो हो जाएगा. You do L&D, you do training, ठीक है, हो जाएगा. A bit of push from the manager, from the team, it happens.
Yeah.
But that effort needs to come from the heart. फिर वो होता है. And in fact, that brings me to the point, and very interesting, something that I learned from you last time we were on a call, is improving your 9x9, which basically levels you up. Yeah. So tell me about that 9x9 wala theory that you have.
Yeah. It's not my theory. It's my previous CEO's theory. And if he's listening to this, he will he'll have a smile on his face.
You want to name him?
Well, Ganesh Natarajan was I reported to him for a long time. But so he used to say that, you should always focus on improving your 9x9, which is the 9 feet by 9 feet around you.
Yeah.
Right. So, and all these philosophies, once again goes to the philosophy of being excellent, best in the world, etc. Right? So 9x9 is, and it's not only about your work. It could be, it could be social. It could be, and 9x9 is not literal, but
of course,
things around you. It's if you take an interest in improving everything around you, right?
So true.
Then the world will be a better place in general, right? So I think, that's also something which stuck with me for a long time. I advocate with all my team members too. That thing is, everybody is not born the same or not born equal. Some people are gifted, naturally good. Some people need a little bit of help but get there. Right?
Yeah.
I think if we take everybody around us and carry them with us, right, for the journey, for a larger purpose, most people are, you could say, motivated enough to come to their journey.
Correct.
I think that everybody should have that ethos in them that, I will improve the surroundings around me, and the world will improve.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last bit I wanted to ask you is about sticking around with a single company for years, which is a very rare thing these days. Is
Yeah.
abhi to bahut hi tough hai. Like, I literally know a kid who quit his job in 6 months because he didn't get promoted. Right in after first job, joined, didn't get promoted in the first 6 months, quit. Versus someone like you who spent 25 plus years in
Yeah,
a
20
company,
odd years. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So tell me, like, what's your perspective on sticking around? What's good? What's bad? Anything else?
Yeah, I stuck around for 20 years. And yeah, I mean, who looks at time when you're enjoying things, right? So the in many ways, the time was not something. I mean, it was not intentional. That it's not that I said, okay, I'll stick around for 20
Right.
years. Right. So I think as a professional, right, what do you want? You want to add skill sets to yourself.
Right.
Okay, and I've used this word frequently today, but I feel it's very important. You continue to add skill sets to yourself. Second is your job has to be interesting.
Yeah.
It cannot be boring, right? So now, and you need to, end of the day, in corporate world, you're interacting with a lot of people all the time with the same set of people. So you need great company and a great set of people.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a great set of people, your role is ever changing, evolving, always getting more interesting, and you are adding skill sets to yourself, which makes you could say, manage, larger and more complex, situations, teams, functions. Why would you want to leave?
Yeah.
Right? So people leave when they want to do something more interesting. But
Yeah.
if you get something more interesting in your job itself, then why would you want to leave, right?
So you're saying your 9 by 9 was literally something that you were enjoying.
I was definitely enjoying.
Yeah.
So see, in my previous organization, I started in a small role. I gradually grew to head the team. Then I went into a corporate role, and I did. I mean, I had no idea I'll do M&A and stuff, but I kind of did that. So then there are three consulting engagements we did. I was not directly involved in all of them, but I was involved, right?
Yeah.
And I knew how they were operating, and it was very interesting to see how all three of them operated, how they were different, how they were similar, which is McKinsey, BCG, Bain. I worked with all three of them. So so it was interesting. I used to handle investor relations, where you basically spoke to investors. I did that for a long time. And you met investors, sometimes they were angry at you because your performance was. Well, I remember once in Singapore, one analyst started yelling at us because on his recommendation, the stock was bought and our stock didn't do well. And so you have to manage that. Now, all this, it teaches you about how to manage investors, how to manage board. It develops you, and I never felt like I'm losing out on anything just because I'm in the company.
Yeah.
In fact, I did leave when I felt that I'm getting, nothing exciting is happening.
Yeah, you've done your part, and
Yeah, so that's when, and in fact, when I left, I went into something which was completely different from my previous company, because I wanted to do something like completely different. So I had not done delivery in a long time. I moved to a delivery role. So
Right.
and this was a services company. I went to a product company. So it was. So yeah, I just to move myself out from comfort zone deliberately. Right, I didn't want to do something that was similar to what I was doing in the past. So
Right.
so that's why I went to do it. So I think if you enjoy the work, right? If the role is good, compensation is good, people are good, I don't see people leaving that quickly. It's only when one of these are not true, right? Or sometimes, I mean, compensation is important. Finally, right? End of the day,
Correct.
India doesn't have such a strong social security system that you have to take care of your own retirement. So
Yeah,
money is
absolutely.
important. So one of these reasons will kind of decide, whether you stay in the company or not. But if everything is good, why would you leave?
Yeah. Yeah. Money can solve your money problems. So money is very, very important, right? So that's for
Money is
sure.
important. I don't discount it. I mean, I know people who have left who've told me that I come from I don't want to leave, but I'm being paid a shitload of money,
Yeah.
and I can't say no to it. I come from very humble background. I say, okay, good luck to you. But yeah, it does kind of happen. It's an important decision. Yeah.
Yeah. Even I've quit jobs because I wanted money. Because
Yeah.
and I've never regretted decisions, because then I've also learned something more.
Yeah.
The other job couldn't offer. Last question, and interesting, because you've mentioned your point of view across all the things that we discussed, and sticking around with the company, changing jobs, doing something better in life, improving your own job. What's the view that a person should have on the horizon? Do you look at where you're going long term, or do you keep like a very short term view, saying this is my next milestone and that's where I'm looking? What perspective should a person keep?
See, I had once read it was like a saying that career planning is an oxymoron, right? All career moves are unplanned in a way, right? So, what is important is that you add skill set. Back to my point.
Ah,
And the skill set is not, I mean, I was talking to a friend I know, and, I was telling him that he was telling me, what do you think I should do? I want to rise to the top. And so I said that you come across as as a factory worker to me, right? So when you reach a point where upward management is just as important, which means talking to CEOs, CXOs,
yeah,
board members, investors, and your the quality of your language is not that great at all. Right? So now, if you go back to IT, right, we have people who are called delivery heads who handle a lot of delivery. But if you want to be the head of the business, then it's a different skill set completely, right? So
Massive.
you need to manage P&Ls, you will interact with CXOs from the customer side, so your language has to be different.
Correct.
So I said, that is the skill set, kind of you need to develop. So I think so it's important that you are very clear on the skill sets you want to develop. And sometimes what happens is, let's say you are in a company, you are in a role, there are a few skill sets which you can add, right? If you can add, you should try and make that movement there. But if there is no immediate, you could say in the immediate vicinity, you cannot add any skill set, I would say leave the job.
Yeah.
Because then you're not building a foundation for the future. I mean, then go to somewhere else where maybe your ability to add a new skill set is there.
Correct.
But to succeed or to go to the top, there are diverse skill sets that are needed to succeed, and you have to be clear that those have to get added. And you can add it in your current job, or you can add it in your in another job, right? So, and always think of ways to be the best, or to basically to cut through the mediocrity, and because that forces you to think differently, right? And I think just that kind of thinking forces you to I would say adds strengths to you, which makes you ready for something larger in the future. So I would say keep adding skill sets. If you don't see any hope of a new skill set in the immediate vicinity of your job, then either scream loud and talk to your manager and say, do something, I want to move elsewhere. But there are times you laterally move in a company from one role to another. And because you can add something, it could be adjacent role, but you could add a skill set. If not, I would say go outside if you want to do it. Because see, I was a headhunter was recently chasing me. That role is completely unrelated to my current role or my previous role.
Yeah.
But when looking at my CV, they said that you have some interesting skill sets, which is why I think you may be useful for this role. And so, you don't know where which direction it will take you. If you have the skill set, you can play the role. If you don't, then you can't play anything. So I would say, don't set a long horizon for yourself.
Got it.
But in say, you could say packets of 1 or 2 years,
Yeah.
keep adding something. Otherwise, because if you had, after 10 years of experience, you had the same skill set that was there at the end of the first year, then what have you gained? Right?
Yeah. So basically, to put very crudely, you're saying don't worry about where you're going. Make sure how you're going somewhere. That matters more. How you're putting each step ahead.
Yeah.
That's what.
Continuous improvement.
Yeah.
These sound very, you could say, continuous improvement is a very, misused word in the information technology sector. but it is so true.
Yeah,
I mean, if
yeah.
you take it seriously, as an individual, you'll improve your 9x9, your business, your everything. Yeah.
Awesome. This was very insightful. Ajay, thank you so much.
Thank you so
being
much
on the
for
show.
calling me, Anirudh. Thank you.
Super. So I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Make sure you subscribe and some more honest, insightful conversations about work, life, and success on this podcast. So make sure if you like what you see, subscribe and share this with someone who might need this. Cheers.